Okay. So in last class, we discussed up to the combining the mobilities due to different mechanism, such as ionized impurity scattering, then phonon scattering, right? There are other scattering mechanism. It could be due to surface, could be due to carrier scattering, can be piezoelectric scattering. So there are various mechanisms of scattering, and the thing to remember, at least in this course, is basically the mobility changes with doping, and it does change significantly, right? So the change in mobility with doping is basically due to the scattering mechanism, right? And mobility basically change in mobility leads to change in conductivity. So people have measured different uh, mobilities. So for example, in this picture, in this graph, you actually see there are 4 different curves. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Then you can also see 1 and 2 are high purity silicon, right? So there is no doping. So that means if you increase the doping, the mobility decreases. And then if you increase the temperature due to phonon scattering, the mobility decreases. And ionized impurity scattering is seen at low temperature usually. So you can see here there is some slight increase here at lower temperatures. So that is due to ionized impurity scattering. There are different ways to measure the mobility. Their names are time of flight measurement, photo Hall. It's a variation of Hall effect that we will discuss. So these are different techniques for measuring the mobility. Uh, Hall effect, out of this we will discuss in this lecture. Then, so basically we have discussed 2 effects, right? Effect of doping on the mobility, effect of temperature on the mobility. Then let's consider what is the effect of field, right? So what happens to the mobility with the electric field? So far in our derivation, what we assumed, we said that mu is equal to q tau by m, right? So there is no term containing electric field here. That means mobility is independent of electric field. So, but is it really true if you change the field? So, if you apply a high field, right? So what are the things that will change? While driving this expression for mu is equal to q tau by m, we assumed that thermal velocity is much larger than the your drift velocity, right? So basically, all the scattering actually controlled by this thermal velocity. But if you increase the field, then these particles get accelerated more, and their thermal velocity will be even higher, and it may become comparable to the thermal velocity, right? So when the drift velocity is comparable with the thermal velocity, we call such electrons and holes as hot carriers, right? So hot carriers means carrier whose drift velocity is comparable to the thermal velocity. Now, if the carriers are hot, what will happen? Of course, they will go even more number of collisions, right? So by collisions, what will happen? These electrons, they will transfer energy to lattice, right? And when they transfer energy to lattice, what will happen? The lattice temperature will increase, right? So that's what happens when you draw a large current from a certain material. Usually the material gets heated up, right? So that means the energy supplied to the carriers is actually getting transferred to the lattice. So at high field, basically, this is what happens. We get hot carriers, and the lattice temperature increases. So for such non-equilibrium cases, you might hear about electron temperature and the lattice temperature, right? So that means it is not in equilibrium. If electron temperature and lattice temperatures are different. So by electron temperature means these electrons have high kinetic energy, right? Now in some material such as silicon and germanium, this mobility actually saturates, right? At high field, mobility saturates. At low field, it's basically linear, and the slope is basically mu. So if you have V here, V is equal to mu E at low field. At high field, it saturates. But in some other materials such as gallium arsenide, this electron velocity may actually decrease. So it may go like this, and then it may decrease like this, right? And this is called negative gradient or negative conductivity, right? That means you are applying a more field and your mobility is decreasing, right? So you apply the more voltage, your current reduces, right? So this is the concept of negative conductivity. Now how that can happen? That you can find from the Venn diagram of or band structure of silicon. So, and of course, with negative conductivity, current can become unstable. And another concept is avalanche multiplication. So, if the field is very high, more than the breakdown field, then these electrons, energetic electrons, holes, can break the bond, right? And can knock out electron from the from silicon bond or any other bond. So, this knocking out of electron, this knocked out electron can again get accelerated. It can further knock out another electron, so they get multiplied, right? So that is called avalanche multiplication. Now all these phenomena occurs at high field, right? At high field, these phenomena occur. So understanding the velocity saturation in silicon, avalanche multiplication is fairly straightforward. Let us look why the electron velocity decrease at high field in gallium arsenide. Now we can recall that in gallium arsenide band structure, there are different valleys, right? Can you recall? There is gamma valley, there is L valley, there is X valley, right? So it basically comes from that. So if you see here, this is the velocity versus field for silicon, silicon holes, and this electrons in gallium arsenide. So you see here for silicon and silicon electron and holes, this is basically saturating. But for gallium arsenide, it achieves a peak here and it decreases after that. And again, it saturates basically, right? So saturation is not same as the peak velocity, right? So let's say this is the conduction band in gallium arsenide, right? So, in gallium arsenide, this is a conduction band. If you increase the field, what will happen? These electron can go to gamma valley also, right? At high field, because now there are a lot of electrons, they are getting filled, so they can go to gamma valley also, right? Now these two valleys will have different effective mass, right? And your mobility is mu tau by m, right? So this is the cause. Let's see this thing in more detail. Okay, this negative differential conductivity has an application in gun diode. Okay, here you see. So this gamma valley and the it's other way around. Hey? This gamma valley is at higher this thing. Okay. Okay, this is gallium arsenide, right? So it is direct band gap. It's okay. In silicon, it's other way around. Right? So in gallium arsenide, it's a direct band gap. So initially, your electrons are occupying this conduction band here, and holes are occupying the valence band, right? So when you apply the field, right, these electrons get accelerated, they get more kinetic energy, right? So they can go up in this band. Now when they cross this the energy gap of these two values, which is 0.31 electron volt, right? So from 0.31 you can basically estimate the energy, the electric field at which peak will occur, right? So you see here, this peak occurs at 3 kilovolt per centimeter, right? So it actually comes from this energy gap. If this energy gap is higher, this peak will come at even higher field, right? And of course, if this is large enough, then before the transfer of electron to second valley, there may be this breakdown may occur, right? So here this energy gap is small, so breakdown does not occur. Before that, electrons get transferred to second valley. So now if you see, compare these two valleys, so mass in gamma valley and mass in this satellite valley, they are different, right? So this mass in satellite valley is more, right? So electron in the gamma valley, mobility of electron in the gamma valley will be more than the mobility of electron in satellite valley, right? So when at high field electron get transferred to the satellite valley, their mobility actually decreases, right? So this is the reason for negative differential conductivity, right? So conductivity decreases. Okay, is it clear, or you have any question to ask?
Sir, can you explain this again? Negative differential.
See, at low field, electrons are lying in the gamma valley, right, or the conduction band. When you apply high field, these electrons get energy QE, right? So they actually go up in this band itself, right? Now, if you see, if energy is more than 0.31 electron volt, they see another state here, right? So these electrons can as well go here also. Now electrons in the gamma valley, the mass is different from the electrons in the satellite valley, right?
Yes, sir.
So when they now they can go to the satellite valley only at high field. So at high field, these electrons which have gone to the satellite valley, their mass will be more. They will be more bulky. So it will be difficult to move them. So their mobility will be less. So you are within certain electric field. All the electrons are in the gamma valley. You have this V equal to mu E, right? And it can saturate also. But before saturation occurs, or just before the saturation occur, these electrons have ability to go to second valley also, right? So some electron will go to second valley, right? At even higher field, more electron will go to satellite valley. Now how is it possible? You recall one problem we did in tutorial, right? The energy gap was given and their masses were different. So at certain energy, these two will have same number of carriers because it has more density of state, right? So although compared to this, it is little shallow here, but DOS is more, right? Because mass is more. So at certain Fermi level, right, they will have same carrier concentration. And if you go further, then the satellite will have more carriers, right? So this will dominate, and that's why the conductivity actually decreases. And of course, the saturation velocity will be determined by the satellite valley, the final saturation velocity. So you see here is the gamma valley here, this is the satellite valley here, and here most of the electrons are in satellite valley basically. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay. Now we have discussed the effect on mobility. So mobility as a function of doping, as a temperature, as a field, right? That we have discussed. Now, how do we measure the mobility? So measuring the mobility, measuring the conductivity, there. Of course, we will discuss the Hall effect. Before that, I want to just show you a couple of slides on probe method, right? So there are techniques called 2 probe or 4 probe method, right? So this 4 probe method is quite popular for measuring the mobility. So if you can consider a small sample, right? Right, a small sample here, and then you apply 4 probes here, right? Then what you do for the 2 end probes, you apply a current, right? So current going here and leaving this place, right? So you have a current source here, and current is flowing from leftmost, and the circuit is completed from the rightmost, right? So this current I is flowing. Now this, due to this current I, the voltage will develop across all these probes. So especially the middle two, where we will measure the voltage across them, the developed voltage across them we will measure, and that will tell us about the conductivity or the resistivity, right? So there are two possibilities, that if the thickness of the material T, this is T, if T is much larger than this spacing S, right? So this spacing is S, right? So if T is much larger than S, then what will happen? You can basically consider these points to be something like, let's say this is your sample here, and then these field lines basically should be some kind of concentric half spheres, right? It will be basically like half sphere. It's basically you drill something in the ground, right? And then if it is porous ground, the water or whatever entities flows in all the directions, right? It's like half sphere, right? So if you consider that kind of model, so if current is flowing perpendicular to this spherical surface, then you can write R is equal to rho. Now L is, let's say, along the radius is dx, right? Divided by area. Now area will be what? Now area of a sphere is 4 pi r square. So here r is x, so 4 pi x square. So it's a half sphere. So area will be 2 pi x square, right? And then you integrate from s to 2s, right? Or x1 to x2, right? So that will give you the relationship between the spacing and the resistivity, right? So your resistance that you measured will be rho by 2 pi 2s, right? So if you measure the voltage here, right? So the ratio of this um, V over I, right, will give you R, and from R you can measure the resistivity. Similarly, if the thickness is much less than the spacing, right, then what will happen? Then you can assume it to be something like this. Right? You are probing here, then there are concentric circles, right, which are extending like this. So in this case, if you assume distance to be x, so at x distance, this is at dx. So if L become dx, then the cross section area will become this perimeter of the surface, so which is 2 pi x times the thickness, right? So it's basically 2 pi x times thickness, right? So the current is actually moving from this interface in all directions, right? So that's what you integrate. So you get the expression something like this, rho log 2 by 2 pi t. So it depends on the sample thickness, right? So that basically from that you can measure the activity of the or the resistivity of the semiconductor. So this is called 4-point probe method. You can also know about this terminology. It's called seat resistance. Now seat resistance is defined as if you take a piece of semiconductor, right, of a certain L and certain height W, right? So if this is of square size, right? So is basically the resistance per square area, right? So that is basically the sheet resistance. So your rho becomes sheet resistance wafer thickness, right? So if you take this L here, right, and this is the thickness is W. So if this is L and this is also L, right? Both are L, right? So it's basically it's a square of area L square, right? So what is the resistance of this one? So its resistance will be rho times L by A, and now A will become L times W, right? So let's say current is flowing in this direction. So length is L and cross section area is L times W. So if you do this then, so your R is rho by W. So rho you can say R times W, right? So R is the sheet resistance multiplied by the wafer thickness. So that will give you the resistivity. Now you can see this thing more pictorially here. If you single probe, then basically current is flowing in all the direction, right? If you use another probe there, then what will happen? From this probe also current will flow in all the direction, right? But if there is a contact probe nearby, right, then the direction of the flow will be modified, right? Because now there is a direct path, right? So the electrons have high probability of taking the direct path rather than indirect path. It's like you have two resistors in parallel, right? Let's say 1 ohm and 100 ohm, right? So of course more current will go through 1 ohm and less current will go through 100 ohm. So same thing happens here, right? I think example you have already done in your JE also. If you have infinite network of resistors, so the resistance between two nodes comes out to be R by 2, right? So this basically you can see from here. Let's say this is the point from where you are injecting the current, right? So current will go in all four directions equally. So let's say it's 1 1 1 in all four directions. Then at the next junction, it will again these two perpendiculars are identical. So they will have, let's say, component alpha alpha, and this is beta, right? So 2 alpha plus beta will be equal to 1, right? And then if you put another if you have another contact here, then current will taken out from here, right? So basically you can superimpose them, right? So this is the current injecting point, blue point, and red is the current outgoing point. So when you combine these two, what will you get? One is coming here, one is going here. So this is basically 2, right? So both are adding up to 2. And then this is 1 minus alpha, this is 1 minus beta, this is 1 minus alpha, right? So this basically 3 minus 2 alpha minus beta equal to 2, right? So that will basically you can estimate the relationship of alpha beta, and you can get the effective R, right? So by substituting this 2 alpha plus beta equal to 1, you get current equal to 2, right? So the current in the branch connecting these 2 points is basically 2, right? So that to measure the resistance of infinite network. So probe works in a similar way. Of course, in probe it's all continuous, right? Here in this example is discrete, right? But the technique is similar. Now let us discuss the Hall effect, right? The Hall effect, if you look at the Hall setup, what we do actually, let's consider a bar of semiconductor, right? Now semiconductor bar, let's say its length is L, right? Its width is W. Let's say this is the width, right? And let's say its height is or thickness is T, right? Then you apply a voltage at the two ends of the length. So let's say this is positive, this is negative, right? So this leads to some current, right? Which current can be measured, right? So if we apply a voltage V, right? We know the current Ix flowing through the bar. Then let's define the convention also. This is basically X direction, and this is in Y direction, and the magnetic field is in Z direction, right? So let's consider a P type of material first. So what will happen? The holes will flow in the direction of current, right? Now, these holes will experience a force due to electric field as well as due to magnetic field. So due to electric field, of course, there already current is Ix and the force is Q times electric field, right? Because holes have positive Q charge. And due to magnetic field, it will be Q times V cross B, right? Now these are vectors, right? Now V is in the direction of X direction, right? V is in X direction and B is in Z direction, right? So V cross B will be in which direction? V cross B will be in minus Y direction, right? So that means holes will, due to the magnetic field, these holes will move to the minus Y side, right? So this side we will have accumulated holes, and of course, if the holes are accumulated here, here will be the slightly deficiency of the holes, right? So this side will become positive. So if you measure voltage VAB, right, will be positive, correct? Where A is on minus Y side, correct? So because V cross B is in minus Y direction, now when these electrons, these holes are accumulated on this side, there is a net charge here. Now this charge will create a field, right? These accumulated holes on left side and the resulting negative charge on the right side, they will create a field whose direction will be in Y direction, right? So this accumulation will create a field in EY direction, right? Now in a steady state, we have no circuit here, so current will not flow. So what will happen? The developed field will balance the force due to magnetic field, right? The Lorentz force, right? So total force in Y direction is the developed field EY and the force due to magnetic field BZ, right? So that means your EY will be V times B, right? Now EY is V times B. So now V you can get from the current, right? So from Ix you can get the V. Now what is Ix? Ix is N or P in this case times charge, then area times drift velocity, right? So that is basically mu times E. And of course you can write in J also. J is basically I by A, right? So that becomes PQ mu E, right? So from this you can basically get now mu E is actually the velocity, right? So you can write, let me write here. Ix by A is Jx. Jx is equal to Q times E times mu E. Mu E is basically Vx, right? So Vx you can write J by Qp, right? So J by Qp times Bz. Now if you combine these E by Jx and Bz, right? So you can write Ey is equal to some constant times Jx Bz. So Ey is basically a developed field. Ey you can also write VAB divided by the width W, right? So VAB is called Hall voltage. So VAB by W is RH Jx Bz. RH is a constant, right? And by comparison, RH is 1 by Qp naught, right? So if you have this kind of setup, you can measure current you can apply particular magnetic field, and you can measure the voltage VAB. So you know all these terms, JX you know, BZ you know, EY you know, right? So from this you can measure RH, a constant, right? And that will give you the carrier concentration, right? Now I want you to think, what about N-type material? What will happen in N-type material? N-type material, these are electrons. So electron will flow in opposite direction, right, of the current flow. And V cross B will be, so V cross B will be in Y direction, but their charge is negative. So the force on electron will be minus Q times V cross B. So force on electron will also be in minus Y direction. So for N type, electron will accumulate here. For P type, holes will accumulate here, right? So that means if it is P type, then VAB will be positive. For N type, VAB will be negative. So just by measuring the developed voltage, you can tell whether a material is N type or P type. What about intrinsic? Anybody can tell me what about intrinsic? What will happen in intrinsic? VAB will be positive, negative, or zero? Please, quick answer.
Zero.
Huh?
Zero.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Zero, sir. Zero.
Very nice answer. But there is an assumption here. What is the assumption? If both the particles are exactly identical, their mobilities are same, right? Then only it will be zero. If their mobilities are different, then what will happen? Force is there, and force is Q times E or Q times V cross B. That force is same, but masses are, if masses are different, what will happen? Their acceleration will be different, right? So their tendency to accumulate will also be different. You understand? So for intrinsic, VAV will be zero only if their mobilities are same or their masses are same. Tau is same, right? If the mobilities are different, then you will see slightly different result. So let us analyze a more
Sir,
general case.
But electrons and holes will get deflected in opposite directions.
No. They will deflect in same direction. Just now I showed you. See, electron holes are moving in x direction. So V cross B is along minus y direction, and Q times V cross B is also in minus y direction. So holes will accumulate on minus y in phase. Electrons are moving in minus x direction. So V cross B is basically along y direction, but their charge is negative. So force is minus Q times V cross B. So the force on electron is also in minus y direction. So these electron and holes both will be deflected in the same direction, minus y direction. So if holes are in majority, the interface A will become positive. If electrons are in majority, the surface A will become negative. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So it is basically the two things. Velocities are in opposite direction and charges are opposite, right? So Q times V cross B will be in the same direction, because they are moving in opposite direction and their charges are opposite. So if you see here, let me remove this thing. Okay, so this is the expression. Now from Hall measurement, you can get P naught as Q by RH. RH is basically Ey by Jx Bz. So all those things you can write, right? Now Ey is VAB that you have measured divided by the thickness, and J is basically current that you have measured divided by the cross section area WT, right? So you notice here there is very stringent requirement on A and B. A and B have to be exactly opposite. You know, if they are slightly off, then there will be another drop. Let's say if they are slightly off, then there will be another drop due to this current I times, you know, R for this delta X region, right? So if they are not exactly opposite, then this voltage will not be the Hall voltage, right? So there is a technique to counter this thing, right? Then conduct resistivity, you can of course directly measure from IV measurement, and mobility, you can combine these two. So it becomes 1 by rho times H, right? So RH by rho, you get the mobility. So from all measurement and the conductivity measurement, there are two measurements actually here, right? Of course, this is a Hall measurement, and in the Hall measurement itself, we are also measuring the IV, right? So that is basically conductivity. So from these two measurements, you can find the carrier concentration and the mobility. Now this mobility is of which carriers? This mobility is of majority carriers. So you cannot obtain mobility of minority carriers from this Hall measurement. Correct? So this is a limitation. So let's discuss the more general case, how the mobility plays a role. So let us assume both the carriers are flowing through the bar of semiconductor. So this is again semiconductor where both electron and holes are flowing. So if the current is in X direction, so this is X direction. So current is flowing in an X direction. So that means electrons will go in minus X direction, right? And holes will go in plus X direction, right? And if the magnetic field is coming out, right? Coming out, right? So it's basically coming out of the paper, right? So V cross B will be, this is V, and field is coming out. So V cross B will be down, right? Or in minus Y direction, right? So for holes, E times V cross Q times V cross V will be in minus Y direction. What about electrons? Electrons will have also, because their charge is minus Q. So Q times V cross V will be in, V cross V will be up, and Q times V cross will be down, right? So the magnet force due to magnetic field on electron and holes will be in minus Y direction, right? Now, when these charges are accumulated here, they develop a field. Now, if electrons are in majority, then direction of field will be in minus Y direction, right? If holes are in majority, then direction of field will be in plus Y direction, because the lower plate will become positive, upper plate will become negative. So let's assume any Ey, you know, we don't know the sign of Ey, and it will come out to be positive if holes are in majority, and Ey will come out to be negative if electrons are in majority, right? So due to this developed field Ey, the net force on electron and hole, you can write force is equal to QE on holes in Y direction, and Q times VB in minus Y direction, right? So total force is basically the algebraic sum of these two, right? Or vector sum of these two, right? So they will basically subtract because they're in opposite direction. For electrons, because we have also assumed Ey to be in pointing in Y direction, which is positive for holes, right? And it will be negative for electrons, right? So if Ey is negative, then they will be in opposite direction anyway, right? So that's why for this assumed direction of Ey, we are getting these two things to be added, because when there are only electrons or electrons are in majority, this Ey will point in opposite direction. So the sign of this Ey will be negative. So they will basically balance, right? So you can write force on electron is Q times EY plus Q times VB, right? Because charge is negative, so this is basically you can minus sign you can take to other side, and you can write instead of you can write minus force, right? So negative of force is this thing, correct? Now this force, what it will give, the total force on electron and holes will give mobility, right? And you can write now what you can recall, V is equal to mu times E, right? Or you can write E is equal to V by mu, right? So force is Q times E, so you can write Q times, right? So force is QV times mu. You can also write like this. So this is what is written here. These forces are equated to the QV by mu, correct? So now, but total current in y direction is 0. So total current, of course, you can write Q times P times VH plus Q times N times VE. This is 0. So what you can do, you can substitute expression for VH and VE from first two equations, right? So substitute 1 and 2 in 3 and eliminate VHY and VEY, correct? So when you do that, and you can also in the resulting expressions, you can also substitute the expression for JX, and with that if you calculate RH, which is basically EY by JX VZ, you get this expression, right? You can try it, it's fairly simple. You have to just make the algebra, which is slightly long, which you can do. I think within half a page or something that you can do it. So now you notice here, if it is P type, then you can ignore Qn square here. You can ignore this here. What do you get? And mu square. So what do you have? You have 1 by EP, right? For N type, similarly you have 1 by En, right? But a general expression is P times mu N square minus N times mu E square divided by P times mu N plus N times mu E. So now you can find out in which case RH will be 0. So for RH to be 0, your P by N should be mu E square by mu H square, right? So if the mobilities are equal, then for intrinsic semiconductor, Hall coefficient will be 0. If mobility is more, plus electron of mobility is of course more, so Hall coefficient will be 0 when the material is slightly p type. When the material is slightly p type, Hall coefficient is 0, will be 0 because electron mobility is more than the hole mobility, right? Then in text you may find sometimes a more accurate expression which takes care of scattering factors. So this is basically RE is the scattering factor for electron, RH is the scattering factor for hole. So they may be different. So this we will not go into, but this is just for completeness. You may encounter this kind of expression. If at all we have to use, we will use the first expression only. Okay, is it clear? Hall effect is clear. So as a homework, please try to get the expression for Hall coefficient for general case. Okay, you use equation 1, equation 2, substitute into third equation, and then you also substitute expression for J in third equation. So you use 1, 2, and 4 in equation number 3, right, to get the expression for RH. So what you will do, you will actually eliminate VHY and VEY and try to get the expression for EY by VH, and then you substitute for JX, you will get something expression like this. Okay, so one more slide before finishing this lecture, then we will take 5-minute break. So let me introduce one more concept of Fermi level. Now in equilibrium we assumed that Fermi levels will be aligned, they will be equal, right? Why is that so? So what is Fermi level actually? Fermi level is basically it denotes a tendency to give electron, right? If my Fermi level is up, right, I have more tendency to give electron. If my Fermi level is up, down, then I have tendency to take electrons, right? So this is the meaning of Fermi level. So let's say these two are equal. That means electrons moving from left to right and electron moving from right to left, they will be equal. Now left to right movement will depend on there are electrons, right, or there are states, right, and that are filled, right. So states is basically you have DOS. So this N1 is basically DOS, and then F1 is the probability of this getting filled. So DOS times Fermi distribution. And for a second material to accept electron, it should again have DOS, and then it should be empty. So empty is 1 minus F, right? Similarly, for rate from 2 to 1, it should have DOS and it should be filled. And for the first material to accept electron, it should have DOS and it should be empty, right? So the product of these two will determine the flow. So this is the flow from M1 to M2. This is the flow from M2 to M1. So in equilibrium, both the flow will be equal. So when you equate them, then N1 and N2 of course is common, will cancel out. And what you have, F1 into 1 minus F2, F1 1 minus F2 is equal to F2 times 1 minus F1. So again F1 F2 are common, so you can cancel it. So what you have F1 equal to F2. So the probabilities are equal. The probabilities are equal means now F is 1 over 1 plus exponential E minus E by KT. So that means their Fermi level also have to be equal. So that basically tells you the continuity of Fermi level. So in equilibrium, Fermi level are constant, right? So that means they do not have gradient. Their gradient is 0, right? So in equilibrium, you cannot have a discontinuity or gradient of Fermi level. So with this, we have covered the drift part of carrier movement or carrier transport. And now we will go to diffusion. So before that, we will take 5-minute break. If you have any question, I am ready to answer. Please ask. No question, then let's take 5-minute break. Then after the break, we will resume the discussion.
Sir,
Yeah.
how did you decide the mass relation between electron and satellite valley and gamma valley?
No, see, the mass is depending on the curvature. You understand? So satellite valley and gamma valley will have different curvature.
Yes, sir. But how did you decide by seeing that D2
No.
E
See,
by
this
dictating?
was a cartoon. This was just a cartoon. But for gallium arsenide, you can see the band structure. Maybe I can show you. Let me see, where is the band structure? Let me see the band structure for gallium arsenide. Just a minute. Okay, here it is. Are you able to see?
No, sir, not until now.
You able to see now?
No. Yes.
Let me share again. If you cannot see, I will share again. Screen 2.
Yes,
Now
sir.
can you see?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So you see here in gallium arsenide, this is gamma valley. This is your gamma valley. And there are two satellite valleys, S1 and S2, right? Out of which is lower? The L valley is lower, right? And X valley is slightly higher. So the gap between these two is 0.31 electron volt. Right? Now you see the curvature. This is so sharp and this is so broad, right? So of course the mass will be more here.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So it actually coming from this diagram, which is the measured and calculated ones. What I saw,
Okay, sir. Understood.
they are cartoons basically. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
So let's have 5-minute break. Then we will. Yeah.
Sir, Sir, in germanium also such thing can happen. So why isn't means from the L value it can jump to the gamma value at higher energy. So it will not decrease.
No, it can jump also. In that also it can happen, but you see the energy gap. Are you able to see? For gallium arsenide, the gap is small. But in case of silicon, in case of germanium, the gap is so high. See, can you see the picture here? See, for silicon, gap is so high. Germanium, the gap is not that high, but is large compared to the gallium arsenide. And the effect will be visible when their masses are significantly different. Their mobilities are significantly different. Let's say you have two identical values. Sometimes semiconductor may have two identical values here. They are called subbands, right? So if these values are identical here, it can go from one value to second one. It won't be different. Only when it goes from one value to another value, which is very different, you will see this effect. Correct? Okay. Any other doubt? So we are closing here now. So after 5 minutes, we will start another class. Thank you very much.